哦 test 唔係好得嘅，唔係好得。下完係啊，即係要坐低先得嘅。
Put all of them on to make sure all your voices on the stage should be.
Please take the chair off. I will not sit down.
Okay. Maybe only the Q&A session. Yeah, the question and answer section. So Q&A, so we have to be seated, yeah. Yeah. I'll take the group photo first. I see. But yeah, the backdrop is outside, so sure, yeah. There's a perfect.
I don't need this.
The Hong Kong Polytechnic University, PolyU, leverages its world-class academic and research excellence to develop innovative solutions for a more sustainable tomorrow. In July 2022, the PolyU Academy for Interdisciplinary Research PAIR was established as the university's central research platform, dedicated to providing world-leading interdisciplinary solutions to significant societal challenges. PAIR is composed of multiple constituent research institutes and research centers. Each research unit focuses on a particular research area and is joined by researchers from various PolyU faculties, schools, and departments. These research areas broadly fall under three main themes, including advanced technologies and manufacturing, good health and well-being, and smart and sustainable cities. PAIR researchers develop new materials, systems, technologies, and techniques that support industrial modernization, upgrading, and transformation. Look into the factors and mechanisms influencing human health and wellness and develop evidence-based solutions. And generate smart technology-based solutions for making urban operations and services more efficient, connected, and eco-friendly. We particularly value impactful collaborative activities in research and scholarship. pair researchers pursue research collaboration at different levels. In addition to interdisciplinary collaborations within and between research units, pair and its units establish partnerships with industries, governmental bodies, universities, and other external stakeholders. With internal and external collaborations, we have successfully translated pair-led innovations into commercializable solutions and practical applications, and established joint laboratories and research entities with external organizations, driving scientific breakthroughs, innovation and technology development, and socioeconomic prosperity. Pair's research excellence and research impact have been widely recognized at local, regional, and international levels. Our research outcomes have been published in leading journals, including Nature and Science. Innovations led by pair researchers have won prizes at various competitions and events, including the International Exhibition of Inventions Geneva. Many pair researchers have been named among the world's top 2% most cited scientists in their own areas of specialty. Individual researchers have been selected to the National Academies of Science or Engineering and as fellows of professional associations, and have been bestowed with local, national, and international awards and honors. Harnessing the strengths of PolyU's research and world-class scholars, PAIR will continue our unwavering efforts in research and scholarship, knowledge transfer, and collaboration to develop impactful solutions that benefit Hong Kong, the nation, and the world.
Yeah, we can start, right? Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this seminar. Professor Chen, the director of PAIR, is not here today, but he asked me to introduce the speaker of today. It's our great honor to have Professor Sara from University of Queensland to be a guest speaker today. Professor Donaher studies the ways to encourage consumers to behave in a more environmental, sustainable way, especially when they are in enjoyment and focused context, such as a vacation. We know sometimes when we have leisure, sometimes we harm others. But Professor DOLNICAR actually is trying to see how we can enjoy ourselves on vacation or leisure, but without actually impose harm to others. She develops an experimentally tested theory-informed practical measures that trigger pro-environmental consumer behavior. Her research on a group called Low Harm Hedonism Initiative is dedicated to advancing SDG goals for responsible consumption and production. The group's research covers pro-environmental actions in diverse areas, including reducing hotel room cleaning, plate waste, and the use of cotton napkins to promoting towel reuse. Professor DOLNICAR measures the environmental performance of tourism, explore interventions to change human behaviors, and evaluate the effectiveness of those measures. Over the years, Professor DOLNICAR won more than 30 international awards, including 2 Lifetime Achievement Awards, one of which is US-based Travel and Tourism Research Association Distinguished Researcher Award in 2017, and the Slovenia Ambassador of Science in 2016 by the Republic of Slovenia. Professor DOLNICAR is also a fellow of PAIR, contributing her expertise and insight to PolyU research in tourism sustainability. And also Professor DOLNICAR is a fellow of International Academy for the Study of Tourism. Although it's not included here, I would like to mention this because this is a very important prestige academic institution worldwide. The fellow has to be nominated to get into this association. Without further ado, now I pass the floor to Professor DOLNICAR. Thank you.
stage. Can you all hear me? Are the mics working? All good? Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you very much. So today it's very exciting for me because I'm gonna, for the first time, talk about our new theory, which is called Habit, Enjoyment, Effort Theory. And I will talk you through how over the last 5 years we've developed this. We didn't set out to develop a new theory. We set out to change consumer behavior in hedonic context. We wanted consumers to behave in more sustainable ways. And as we used existing theories, we found things are not quite working as we imagined. So as a consequence, slowly we developed our own theory. So I'd like to present that to you for the first time. There you go. It's the big reveal. It's the worldwide premiere of the theory. And you see, I've graded out because originally all our work was about environmental sustainability, and it was about the hedonic context. Hedonic contexts are contexts where we pursue pleasure, enjoyment, right? And they're very special contexts because we let ourselves go. So we're not as well behaved as we usually are. But actually, I think the theory might work beyond that as well. But let's stick to our context. The starting point is we need to be able to change behavior. Now, you marketers know that, right? Because advertising builds on trying to get people to buy stuff. But that's not the kind of behavior change I talk about here. Think about COVID, where, of course, we needed vaccines, but we also wanted to get people to wear their masks and to keep their distance. We want to get people to eat healthy. That's a behavior change. The biggest problem why medication doesn't work is because of lack of compliance. People don't take their tablets, right? Again, behavior change. We want people to take their tablets. Exercise, right? We want to change behavior. So for public health reasons, but also to combat the looming climate crisis, existential climate crisis, we need to find ways to change behavior. All right, now let's look at specifically tourism. Not all of you are from the tourism background, but tourism is a very interesting sector. Globally, it generates 10% of GDP. So it's really important for the well-being of many people around the world. It is responsible for 1 in 10 jobs. So it literally feeds families. But at the same time, it's not romantic in terms of its sustainability implications. So the newest data shows that tourism generates 8.8% of all global carbon emissions. To make things worse, in a world where everyone's trying to reduce emissions, tourism emissions are increasing by 3.5% every single year. And now you might say, well, Sara, we have technology. We can fix it with technology. Well, maybe we can in future, but certainly we haven't in the past. So technology has only managed to counteract the increase in emissions by 0.3%, all right? So that really means we're in trouble. In addition to emissions, we also use huge amounts of water in the tourism industry, and we generate gigantic amounts of waste. So a fun tourism industry to be engaged in, but very bad from an environmental point of view. All right, so we need to change behavior. Technology is not going to save us, and the IPCC says we could actually reduce emissions by 70% if we could change behavior. But changing behavior is a lot easier said than done, right? So we need theories. Why do we need theories? I don't know how many different disciplines you're here from, but in tourism, I had the privilege to meet a lot of the postdocs over the last week. And one of the recurring questions is, how do I find a theory? You know, how do I add to theory? Well, here I can explain very simply why I need theory. I need theory because if I go and try to change behavior without a theory, it's just trial and error, right? I just sit there, I have an idea, I try it, and it either works or it doesn't work. So it's very difficult via trial and error to build knowledge. If, however, I understand the mechanism that triggers the behavior, then I can intervene systematically. I don't rely on trial and error. And that's basically what a theory is. Let's say I make that up. Let's say if I want to reduce carbon emissions, I need to increase the cost of flights and give you less space on a plane, so it becomes less comfortable, right? If that's my little theory, and you tell me you want to reduce emissions, I can immediately tell you, knowing the mechanism, the theory, what we need to do to achieve the behavioral change. So theories are basically propositions about mechanisms of something, a phenomenon that we're observing in the real world. And theories of human behavior, that's the theories we're interested in, they are propositions of why people behave in certain ways. And there's hundreds of theories, right? All of you who are social scientists or behavioral scientists will know that. And I chose this because every single theory has a different aspect. So we have theories that have partial explanations. So they're somewhere here, right? For example, cognitive dissonance theory is one example. It's a very small mechanism where we feel guilty about something, and we can either change the behavior to feel less guilty, or we can change our attitude to justify our naughty behavior. But it's not a comprehensive theory. It just kind of explains a little part of what's happening. Or social identity theory, equity theory, they're just examples. Then we have, if you want, comprehensive explanations. And the one you all would be familiar is the theory of planned behavior. It's become a bit of a, dominant theory in the social sciences. Although you will see it's not, it is not the holy grail. There is clearly issues with that theory as well. For starters, it has the word planned in it, right? And immediately you think on holiday, not everything's planned. So maybe we will run into trouble here. And then in the sustainability space, we have another theory, which is also comprehensive, but it tries to explain a specific type of behavior. And that's what is called environmentally significant behavior. That means it's behavior that has environmental consequences, usually negative environmental consequences. All right, so this is what we can choose from. So let's start to look at the theory of planned behavior, and let's have a look at the evidence of whether it works or whether it's letting us down sometimes. So the theory of planned behavior tells us that in order for a behavior to occur, people have to have intentions to behave in a certain way. And those intentions are the result of their beliefs. So what do I think about that behavior? Social norms. What does my husband think about the behavior and my kids, and how does everyone else behave? So that's peer pressure. And perceived behavioral control. That means, do I feel that I am in control? Can I decide whether or not I will engage in that behavior? All right? Good. Now, if we want to change beliefs, you can wait, I'll just go back. These things we can't change directly. That's not the mechanism, that's the outcome. This we can't change directly either, because it's influenced by this. So if I want to change behavior, those are my three wheels. That's where I can intervene to change behavior, right? So if I want to use beliefs to change behavior, then I'm going to go and change beliefs. How do we usually do that? We do this by educating people or by providing information. So if you remember the last time you went to a hotel, that's the classic thing we do. You will find a piece of paper that tries to activate or modify your beliefs. It's going to tell you how bad it is to not reuse the towel, that you're going to ruin the planet for your grandkids, right? So it's trying to change your beliefs in order to make you reuse the towel. If you want to leverage social norms, then, oh, by the way, this is not, you will see particularly all of our experiments, we always use this as the control condition, because that's what currently the norm is. So if you ask, how do we change behavior? Everyone would say, well, we need to put a sign up and tell people about it. Educate, 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 right? We see very little evidence of that working. Social norms, we have a bit more evidence. What does that mean? We want to trigger peer pressure in people, yeah? We want to kind of leverage this social expectation. We can do that by telling people how others behave, or we can tell people what close others expect them to behave, yeah? So let's have a look at a few examples. Now, importantly, these are not all my studies, right? This is not our study. You can see who did the study here, but I'm trying to illustrate to you how we can use those theories to change behavior. So this is an old study, very famous study, very simple behavioral change intervention. Basically, this team put in the hotel rooms a sign that says the majority of guests in this room reuse their towels. Why is this so important? Because you see, the more close to me the behavior is that's being modeled, the more similar the person is. So they had different conditions. And to say in this room, so I as a guest go, oh, they must be like me. They booked the same hotel. They were in the same room. They're peers. So if they've done it, I better do it, right? So the closer the peer group, the better. So this increased towel reuse by 44%. You have to think about that, right? what water saving, what electricity saving for the sake of a $1 sign. And that's another important thing. This is a cost benefit. So it's not a sacrifice for a hotel, but it's a win-win. The environment wins, the hotel saves money. Importantly, zero impact on guest satisfaction. Yeah. So this is an example where social norms can be leveraged effectively. And that is very much in line with the theory of planned behavior. Another example, that's more of an American case. I don't know how it would work in China. It would not work in Australia, I can tell you that. In this case, people go into the hotel and at the reception, they're invited to commit to reusing the towels. And if they commit, they get a little badge. And then they get to run around the hotel with their badge and show off the fact that they've committed to reusing the towels. Yeah. And so that worked beautifully. The towel cleaning or fresh towel use reduced by 40%. No impact on guest satisfaction. Again, social norm, right? Because I'm showing the rest of the world that I'm a good girl and I'm reusing my towel. Reducing plate waste, another successful intervention. Now, plate waste is horrible in terms of carbon emissions, yeah? Because we invested all the emissions to produce the food and cook it and chill it, and then we throw it away. And in landfill, it produces methane. So food waste is very, very, very bad for the environment. So what did those guys do? Again, that was a Scandinavian study. They said, you're welcome back again and again. Visit our buffet as often as you want. What did we do here? We found that people are embarrassed to go back because all these other people in the dining room, they see that I'm greedy. I keep going back for more. So what the sign does, it says, no, 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 no. It's a lot more embarrassing to overfill your plate. It's socially acceptable to go back. Yeah. So simple sign, 21% reduction in plate waste. And again, zero impact on guest satisfaction. I say that every time because remember, we're in tourism. I cannot convince a hotel or a restaurant or an attraction to do anything that's going to influence negatively the guest satisfaction. So that's kind of the base condition for everything we do. All right, and plate waste, and that's now, because remember, this is a pair seminar, so it is about interdisciplinarity, and much of what I talk about is classic behavioral sciences, but actually we work with engineers. We have a weekly meeting with our engineers. We work with them to use devices and develop devices to measure behavior. So it's very much interdisciplinary, and we have a brilliant data scientist who prevents us from making mistakes as we analyze our data, right? So in this case, it's very interdisciplinary because you can see that's our plate waste scale. We developed that. It's got a little LoRaWAN transponder at the back. So at every minute, we can measure how much plate waste was generated. And this is a little people counter. So we can immediately calculate plate waste per person per meal. And that's the dependent variable we want to reduce. Yeah, those measurements come in automatically. In fact, this study was conducted during COVID when I was not able to leave Australia. All hotels in Australia were shut, but this hotel in China was open and my research assistant and engineer was stuck in China. So we were able to run the full experiment remotely because we had the wireless system in place. Now, this will mean more to you than me, but my PhD student, Oscar, tried two signs. The first one was this one, which apparently is about the grain that the poem you all learn in primary school, that you need to respect the food that the farmers generate. As romantic as it is, it did not work. Yes, but this one worked, and you will not be surprised. This one says the chairman supports the Clean Plate campaign. So what we found with this sign is we found, you see, that's the baseline plate waste every day. And we put that sign up and it reduces to this level. These are the confidence intervals. So you can immediately see that that's a significant reduction in plate waste. And that is very, oh, by the way, it's about 7%. And you might say that's not much. It is a lot. Like if you can save a hotel 7% every day, that's a lot, both in terms of emissions and money. Yeah. What did I want to say? Wait, there was something else I wanted to say. Plate waste. Oh, of course, this is totally social norm, right? Like this is social norm to the max. This is basically the overall societal expectation about how to behave. Good. Perceived behavior control. Well, how can we do that? We can either change the infrastructure to make it easier to do something. We can increase flexibility. Like when you book something, you might have the option to change that booking later. Yeah, those are the ways we can influence perceived behavior control. surprisingly, despite the fact that everyone's using the theory of planned behavior, there's very little research on changing behavioral control. Yeah. So I gave you a hypothetical example. We're about to work on this, again, interdisciplinary. So we're working with a Hilton in Australia. They're going to switch to single to recycling bins in the hotel rooms. And we want to see, because this is behavioral control, right? Suddenly I can easily sort the rubbish. And we're going to see what a difference that makes in recycling. And you can see here we're in the process of testing a little camera that can measure automatically the bin fill level, so we don't have to do that manually. All right, good. Value, belief, norm theory. Remember, another theory that wants to have a kind of overarching view of behavior, but specific for pro-environmental behavior. So the dependent variable here is not any kind of behavior, but it's environmentally significant positive behavior. Value, belief, norm theory says that this behavior occurs if people feel morally obliged to behave in that way. But again, this and this we can't directly influence. So what can we influence? Well, the next level back is beliefs. And in this theory, we've got 3 beliefs that matter. Ascription of responsibility. What does that mean? I feel responsible for the planet, right? The theory postulates if I don't feel responsible, I'm not going to display that behavior. Second belief is awareness of consequences. So I feel responsible for saving the planet, and I know that not reusing the towels will ruin the planet, or me producing plate waste is a negative impact on the planet. Yeah. And the third belief is so-called pro-environmental beliefs. They're generalized beliefs about how people feel about the environment. Yeah. And then in this theory, because it's called value, belief, norm theory, we obviously have a bunch of values. They're almost the foundation, the fertile ground upon which the rest builds. These ones we can't change. We can't change them. Why? Because they're very long-term. It's like our operating system. It's very hard to change someone's value systems. Whereas beliefs is easier to change. They're more short-term constructs. So we can't change the values. We also cannot change these general beliefs, because again, they're not behavior specific. They're broader. Yeah. And that's the NAP is a scale that's usually used to measure those. So we can capture them, but they're hard to influence. So it leaves us with those 2 things. Those are the 2 things we can change if we want to change behavior. Let's have a look at a few examples. So the classic one here, again, remember we're talking about beliefs. If we analyze this, our area is experiencing drought. Let's conserve water together. So immediately we know there's a problem. It's something we care about. And it tells us exactly what we can do to take responsibility to solve that problem. Yeah, so it's a belief-based approach to change behavior. Now, here's a few unsuccessful ones. I rarely talk about unsuccessful ones, but actually I need to, because then you will understand why we had the urge to think about new constructs. So this is now work we did. We did that in a Slovenian hotel. And what we did is we wanted to reduce room cleaning. In a 4-star hotel, every room clean means 35 liters of water, 1.5 kilowatt hours of electricity, and 100 milliliters of chemicals. Now, if it's necessary, of course, we're going to do it. But if it's unnecessary, it's a pure waste of resources, right? And it costs the hotel quite a bit of money, about $30 per clean. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to get people to voluntarily opt out. The baseline opt-out rate was 3%, so practically nothing. So what we did, and this is not the interesting bit right now, is we gave them a drinks voucher. We'll talk about that later. And the drinks voucher was great because we reduced room cleaning by 42%. But then we did what value, belief, norm theory tells us, and we added, people were happy. And then we added the pro-environmental information, exactly as the theory predicts. Yeah? And that had 0 additional impact. Yeah? Now that's important to understand. So all the impact came from the drinks voucher. 0 impact came from the belief change that this is the environmentally good thing to do. All right, another failure. So this was a sign we developed specifically to reduce food waste using value, belief, norm theory. So we're doing exactly what the theory says, explaining all those constructs. 0 impact on plate waste. Yeah. Another one, that was, again, you will see that study coming back in another form later where we trigger a different construct. But here it was, again, a plate waste experiment. And we had different conditions of explaining people why not to leave plate waste behind. Absolutely zero impact, right? People just basically ignore it. And the last one, I think, so you see, if you do experimental research, you will have more failures than successes because, you know, you have a certain hypothesis, you test it, it doesn't always work. So here we thought maybe the messages are too far away from the actual behavior. So we produced little stickers and we put the stickers exactly where the behavior is. So these ones went on the light switches, right? So that nobody could not see what we're trying to communicate. And again, we did this for electricity, for water, and for towel reuse, absolutely zero impact. So that left us thinking we're in trouble because we actually lack the mechanism. We haven't cracked it. All these constructs like beliefs that we think are going to fix it all just seem to not work, okay? And if you look at this is not a meta-analysis, this is just a review, but it gives you a very good overview. What you see here is all field experimental studies where the research team tried to make people behave more sustainably. What you see along the x-axis are the constructs, beliefs, social norms combined with beliefs, social norms alone, and so on. The bar height tells you how often each thing was studied. And not surprisingly, because now you know the dominant theories, the vast majority of studies is looking at beliefs, trying to use beliefs to change behavior. Now, the colors tell you how often it failed and how often it worked. Green means it worked, red means it failed. So that's an interesting picture, right? Because the success rate for beliefs is only 60%. And it's only 60% of published work. And you all know the term publication bias, right? Where journals don't like to publish insignificant stuff. So there's a lot more failures that were never published. Then we have social norms, 50% success rate. So those are the two constructs which are currently dominant if we use the mainstream theories of human behavior. But then look at this, enjoyment. So if we were to press the button of enjoyment, if we would make the sustainable behavior more enjoyable, suddenly we have 100% success rate. Now, of course, the base is very low, right? There's not many studies. But what we can say is this is promising. So it's nudging, which means changing infrastructure. Yeah. So that review really tells us it's maybe time to look a bit further. And without disrespect to the theory of planned behavior, maybe in hedonic contexts like vacations, that is not the best approach to try to change behavior. So that's where habit enjoyment effort theory comes in. What's the premise of our theory? The first premise is we do have more time for hedonism, right? We have countries in Europe now thinking of a 4-day work week, so more leisure. We live longer, more leisure. So more hedonism than there was in the past. Secondly, when we are in pleasure-focused environments, we give ourselves what we call a license to sin. Yeah. So at home, we're well-behaved. We go on vacation. Yes, we are going to party. We're going to stay up late. We might have a glass of wine too much. We don't want to recycle our rubbish. We give ourselves a license to sin. We also adopt a different identity. My PhD student Doreen just published a paper which shows that actually the same human is almost like a different creature on vacation. Yeah, certain things stay the same, but certain things change. We are more adventurous and we are by far less environmentally responsible. Yeah, so we kind of transition into this very chilled and relaxed, unsustainable person. So we feel we deserve to enjoy ourselves. We can't be bothered. So this is, I deserve to enjoy myself means enjoyment desire is increased. I can't be bothered means I'm not willing to put any effort in. I'm on vacation. So we have enjoyment, we have effort. And then we have habits. And we know in everyday life, about 43% of everything we do is purely habitual. We get up, we brush our teeth, we have our breakfast. We don't ponder it. We don't plan it. It's just habitual, right? We just do it. All right. And based on that, we start looking at how we could set this up. Our dependent variable is environmentally sustainable behavior in hedonic contexts. Yeah. But again, grayed out. Maybe it's a bit more than that. First thing we look at habit. And now what's important to say, we had a debate recently about theories in tourism. And someone said, well, they're not really theories in tourism because they use constructs that have been around before. Yes, of course they do, right? But it's about how it fits together. So we're not claiming that habit is a new construct. Habit is an old construct. There's a big body of work in psychology about the impact of habit. And yet, we are not aware of any intervention in the behavioral sciences. I'm not talking tourism, I'm talking the behavioral sciences that would have leveraged habit as a construct to change human behavior. Yeah. Now, the same is true with enjoyment. Enjoyment, Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner, for a little while, he was fascinated by enjoyment and founded something called hedonic psychology, which the premise was that people do what is fun, right? And they keep doing it as long as it's fun. Yeah. So again, is the construct new? No, of course the construct is not new, but it's a really important construct in hedonic context, because in that context, all we want is enjoyment, right? So we can't ignore enjoyment if we want to change behavior. And the third one is effort. And you see, this is possibly the least original one if you want, because you can argue that a behavioral control is about effort. So that's a construct from the theory of planned behavior. And certainly choice architecture, which is the key leverage point of nudging, is also about effort. So if we make the sustainable option the simplest option, right, then we will see that that behavior will increase. So effort probably most grounded in the mainstream theories. So those are the three constructs we are kind of hypothesizing form the best leverage points for behavior change in hedonic context. We expect that behavior that is habitual is more likely to be displayed, and we can leverage better in hedonic context. We hypothesize that if we can increase the enjoyment of the sustainable behavior, we have a higher likelihood of triggering that behavior. And we hypothesize that the higher the effort, the lower the behavior, or the easier the behavior, the higher the chance to get people to behave in a certain way. All right, good. Now, first we're going to put it to the test. And this is a bit complicated. I'll talk you through it. So when the theory of planned behavior and value belief theory were originally developed, what the authors of those theories did is they asked people in a survey about a whole range of different behaviors, right? How often do you recycle? How often do you do these things? And they asked in the same survey the constructs, right? Beliefs, social norms. And then they looked if these constructs predict the frequency of behavior. Of course, in this day and age, people are going to say, but that's just a survey and we can't really rely on that. But in the first instance, what we did is we went and compared our theory and its predictive validity with value belief norm theory, which is the closest relevant theory in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So what you see here is you see two groups, I believe. This is the new ones. These are the original variables that were used when value belief norm theory was developed. And you can see the value belief norm predictive validity is in blue. So it tells us how well can the constructs in value belief norm theory predict the frequency of stated frequency of each of those behaviors. And the green one is our theory. Yeah, and you can immediately see with all the problems of a survey research that except for reducing car use, our theory predicts better why people engage in those behaviors or not. Then we said, those are old-fashioned behaviors. Let's look at more contemporary ones, like avoid eating meat, right? That wasn't the thing when value belief norm theory was first created. And so we had a whole bunch of new behaviors, and the picture is pretty similar. So basically habit, self-reported habit, self-reported enjoyment, and self-reported effort predict better the self-reported frequency of those behaviors. That doesn't tell us the theory is better, but it tells us, it's interesting, right? It's worth looking into a bit further. So now we go into the evidence from real field experiments. That means we're measuring real behavior to see whether these constructs are good. And where does habit enjoyment theory help us? First of all, it helps us to identify specific, oh, I'm sorry, that's a typo, specific contexts and behaviors that we can target. So I will show you on the next slide, we can profile each behavior and we can identify which behavior is going to be really hard to change and which behavior is going to be easier to change. It can then help us design behavior change interventions and, oh, sorry, And it helps us identify whether we should target habit, effort, or enjoyment. Yeah. So let's have a look at an example. This one is bring reusable bags for shopping. And we have it at home and we have it on vacation. And you can see at home, it's highly habitual. People are just used to it. They just grab their shopping bags. People perceive it as easy. People don't mind. It's not like super enjoyable, but it's not a big deal. So now 80% of people engage with this behavior. On vacation, only 50% of people engage, right? So why? Because it's not habitual on my holiday and it's still not very enjoyable. Yeah. So this is interesting because I can leverage habit. If I want to change that behavior in the vacation context, I have a very good chance because it's already something people are trying to do. So if I can increase that by doing some intervention, giving away a bag, whatever, right? Then that will give me a chance. Quite different picture with avoid eating meat. Look at that contrast. Yeah. So we can see again at home, it's just not a habit. Away, it's not a habit at all. People do not perceive it enjoyable not to eat meat. So that already tells us that is not low-hanging fruit. That is a really hard one to change. And easy. Well, easy is probably the one. And look at the percentages. That's the predicted percentage from the model. That's the actual self-reported percentage. And you can immediately see if you're going to try to change people's behavior from meat eating, it'll be a lot harder for you to achieve that than it is for shopping bags, right? We have no habit to build on. People are not really enjoying their vegetarian food, right? So you're fighting against all odds. All right, good. Now let's have a look at a few interventions with effort. So this was a study we conducted in a city hotel in Slovenia. And what we did is we changed the default. So effectively that's nudging, but what it means also is we reduce the effort. So the default mode in this hotel is that they clean the room every day. And if you don't want it cleaned, you have to tell them, right? So it's an effort to tell them, please don't clean my room. So we turn it around and we make it more effort to say, please do clean my room, right? So if you don't put the sign out, the room will not be cleaned. But if you put the sign out, bigger effort, then they will clean it for free, no extra cost. Yeah. That little change massively changes behavior. We can reduce room cleaning by 2/3, right? By just changing the default. People are just as happy. In fact, that hotel is one of the few that immediately adopted that, never looked back. Increasing hand towel use. So here what we did is we had a little elephant towel and we said, it's no effort to hang me up, just hang me up, right? I would say that's our weakest one, but we're still trying to leverage the effort, and we reduced hand towel use by 35%. As you see, these are all actual field experiments. I'm not relying on surveys. We are counting the number of towels in the hotels. Yeah, no impact on guest satisfaction. Reducing the use of cotton serviettes, same trick again. So that's in a Slovenian hotel where you come for breakfast and there's a very elegant, white, pristine cotton serviette. And we replaced that with a recycled paper serviette, but we still put the cotton serviettes at the buffet because remember, we don't want to influence guest satisfaction. So if someone desperately needs a pristine white serviette, they can still go to the buffet and get it. So basically, we just change the default and we reduce it. Well, I would say it's 100% change because I think the few people that picked it up, that was random. That was not really intentional. They were at the buffet and they grabbed the serviette, right? Zero impact on guest satisfaction. Again, we've just increased the effort of what we don't want to happen. This one is great because it's not about the tourist. A study from the UK, and they went into the kitchen and they wanted to reduce the food waste in the kitchen. And what did they do? They took the massive intransparent black bin and they replaced it with a transparent, smaller bin. And guess what? 73% less plate waste. Why? Well, two things, but the one that's interesting for this talk is the cooks are lazy. So if the bin is small, they have to go and empty it 20 times during the day, but they don't want that. So they're just going to chop up a few more cucumber and throw less away, right? So again, the higher effort is associated with the behavior we don't want to see. In-room heating, this is again an example of where we worked with the engineers. Now here it's not a hotel, it's a student residence at the University of Queensland, and they have old-fashioned heaters under the student desks. So we use the LoRaWAN power meter. So this goes in the power, then the heater goes in. So we can measure exactly the electricity use of the heater. And then we have buttons. Yeah. 1/4 of the rooms just received one button. It was on and automatically off in 2 hours. The rest of the rooms had an on and an off button. Yeah. And you can look at the distribution of electricity use. So the golden ones are the ones with on off, and the purple ones are the ones with just the on button. Right? We talked to the students, and they said, actually, we don't need the heater running all the time. But we just forget to switch it off. We go to a lecture, we just forget to switch it off. It's too much effort, right? So the timer helped them. When we gave them the option to swap conditions, there was only one student who was very upset about the timer. And the rest of them didn't care. So we reduced heater cost by 72%, except for the one student, no impact on guest satisfaction. Good, now we're coming back, I think, to the studies you've already seen. And the ones that I showed you failed. And I will tell you about conditions that didn't fail. So remember, this was our room cleaning study where the beliefs didn't impact. But giving them a free drink, and not only the free drink, but leveraging equity theory in telling them we are sharing the savings. Yeah. If we don't clean your room, we save 10 euros. We will save 5. We'll give you 5 in the drinks voucher. That worked beautifully. And talk about enjoyment, right? You think only kids can enjoy themselves, but you should see a bunch of adults that get a free drink. Like this total joy, right? They're over the moon. There's a black market of drinks vouchers. So it is truly a matter of enjoyment in this case. Another one we haven't published yet that's currently under review is in a Slovenian hotel as well. And again, we want to reduce plate waste. And what we did is 2 things. That's my favorite one, but it failed. But I'm not giving up yet. The one that worked is every time at the dinner buffet, if a table eats up everything they have taken from the buffet, they get a lottery ticket to win a lavish dessert platter. Yeah. So that worked. That significantly reduced by how much? 17 grams less. That's a significant reduction of plate waste. Why? Because it's enjoyment. Right? I'm a dimmer. I want to have this platter. So I'm motivated to engage in the right behavior. The second one, which I will keep trying until it works, is they got a token to play an arcade game, right? And that didn't work. And I know why it didn't work, because that particular hotel has a lot of old couples from Germany and Italy and Slovenia. And old couples don't play arcade games, right? So it was the wrong market segment for the intervention. But in many ways, that's the purest enjoyment, right? You eat up, you get a token, you get to play a game. Yeah. All right. And again, sorry, this was again the wireless sensors. All right. I have to hurry up. Otherwise, I'm going to get kicked off stage. Another one, this is now with kids, is a stamp collection game. So if the whole family eats up, the kid gets a stamp. At the end of the stay, they can give us all the stamp books and they can win a prize. Reduced food waste by 38%, and talk about enjoyment. Like the kids were just loving it, and the parents were also loving it because it was in line with their educational mantra. Good, and that kind of brings us to a combo intervention that we only recently came up with. All the other interventions you saw, it's one target behavior and one intervention. But if you imagine being a hotel guest and you come into the hotel, and then there's one intervention for food waste, one for the towels, one for room cleaning, that would be quite overstimulating, right? So what Doreen did is she said, well, let's figure out which environmentally unsustainable components of a hotel stay people actually don't care about. She did that in a choice model. She just figured out, like, do people really care about towel replacement, bathrobes, toothbrushes, slippers, all this stuff? Turns out they don't. They care about air conditioning and price, right? So I presented that at a keynote conference to industry, and little national hotels immediately jumped at it, and they introduced, on our advice, the lower emissions hotel book. So if you go on their webpage now, You book a room and then it gives you an option. Would you like the lower emissions version of it? And that excludes all these things that are unnecessary and gives you a $10 discount. Yeah. And it worked. Now, remember, the beauty of this is people are booking when they're still in their environmentally responsible home identity. Yeah, they haven't gone crazy yet. They're still at home when they're booking and they're committing to go to a low emissions. So the uptake was really good. It's only offered on their homepage, not on all other channels. 14% uptake almost consistently, and between 75 and 100% satisfaction. What do we mean by satisfaction? Actually, it's not satisfaction. It's rebooking intention. We ask people, if you come again, would you again opt for the lower emissions room? So the beauty of this intervention is that it actually, one single intervention can encapsulate a lot of environmentally positive behavior. All right, that brings us to the conclusions. Dan said I have to talk 45 minutes. So there you go. I'm taking my job very seriously. The conclusions, every theory has a purpose, right? So for the work that we were trying to do, the purpose we were looking for is we need a theory that helps us change behavior. Yeah. And that purpose didn't really work with existing theory because we tried and tried and tried. And this very heavily cognitive dominant paradigm just doesn't translate into behavior change. So we need to develop new theories. And it's really important to say that our theory is not the new best theory. Our theory is one new alternative theory. And you can develop one, and you can develop one, and you can develop one, right? But we need to think out of the square, because if existing theory doesn't serve the purpose, well, then we need to adjust and we need to develop new theory. Initial evidence for this theory seems promising. And the two things I want to emphasize is, I hope you've noticed it. I didn't have time to emphasize it maybe as much as I wanted to, but all of this here would not be possible without interdisciplinarity. Yeah, we have a data scientist who makes sure that we don't stuff things up. Remember the little sticker of the light bulb? When we did that study, me and another behavioral scientist analyzed the data using an analysis of variance, and our intervention was significantly better. So we cracked the champagne and we partied. And then our data scientist came and she said, oh no, girls, no champagne for you, because the experiment went for 5 months. So the daylight hours changed, right? And the electricity saving was a function of more daylight rather than our intervention. So really, this is a combination of data sciences, engineering, and behavioral sciences. And the other thing you've seen is, if we want to study behavior, if we want to study behavior change, we cannot rely on stated behavioral intentions. We need to actually go in there and measure actual behavior. And that means we need to work with industry. Yeah, we can't just sit in our office and run surveys. We need to try to get field sites where we can actually test if what we are hypothesizing works or does not. And I think that's it. And I would be delighted to hear some questions. Thank you very much. Oh, that's me.
Okay. Wonderful. In my mind, I have a like a kind of debate. Okay, I would just speak it out, so all the audience, you can show me your opinion, right? Because like 3 constructs you mentioned, enjoyment, habit, and also effort, right? So in my mind, I'm debating in a hedonic context, basically while you are enjoying your holiday, lie down on the bed in beach or bed in the hotel. So if we want to encourage your so-called pro-environmental behavior, you want service provider to increase your enjoyment level or reduce your effort. Which one is easier? So how many of you think about increase enjoyment will be easier? How many of you think reduce the effort will work more? How do you think?
Well, I think it depends. You're all right. Everyone's a winner. So I think it really depends on the context, right? I think, for example, it's well understood that when you can change the architecture, that's very powerful. Yeah. So, for example, you can reduce the size of your breakfast plate, and that prevents overfilling. So that is an effort approach, and it's very effective. But you cannot always do that. You cannot make the plate this size. Do you know what I mean? So I think it really is. We can talk about what might be better in theory, but once you hit reality, things are quite different. Because once you hit reality, you don't have the full portfolio of options, right? You need to be creative and need to figure out what can I do in that environment. For example, let's talk about buffets. A simple way, in my opinion, to reduce effort is to totally change how you set up the buffet. In my vision, the buffet is either all around and the tables are in the middle, or it's in the middle and the tables are around. So I minimize the distance. So it's very little effort to go back and get more. Then I go to a hotel and I say, well, how about you rip out your whole buffet and build a new one? And they're going to say, nah, not happening. Right? Well, that's the end of that story. So that means here I need to work with enjoyment. So it doesn't actually matter which one is more powerful, because for each specific behavior you want to change, there will be a limited number of creative options of what you can actually do.
Yeah, great. So I would like to invite questions from audience, because today we have people from different disciplinary background. As we see here, lots of things we can do. Either you design the, redesign the settings, or either you invent some, technology to monitor people's behavior, then provide feedback, etc. So any questions, any suggestions or solutions from the audience?
Yes, there's a question there.
Okay.
How can gamification change vaccination behavior? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I think gamification is a brilliant approach to increase enjoyment. Absolutely. So if you look at the buffet game with the kids, right, a stamp collection game, that's gamification. It's a very basic approach to gamification, but it turns out that for us, it was easier to have a printout paper than an app to play that particular game. But absolutely, like we haven't found the field site, but we have, ideas of how we could have leaderboards at buffets, or leaderboards in a student accommodation where we have different floors compete how much water they've saved. So I think gamification plays a massive role in changing behavior. Absolutely.
How about specifically, say, public health campaigns like vaccination campaigns? Vaccination.
Yeah, well, I'm not a health professional, right? And certainly we've seen a lot of reluctance against vaccination. But yes, I haven't seen, certainly in Australia, I have not seen a gamified approach to vaccination. Yeah, but there's no reason there couldn't be. For example, there could be a competition between high schools. Who has the highest vaccination rate, right? And then if the kids want to compete, they might put pressure on the parents. So it's totally conceivable that it might work. Yeah. It is my experience is that it's a bit like with children, right? If you have children, you know that you can achieve a lot more with the carrot than with the stick, right? So the gamification approach is wonderful because, I want to play an arcade play. I want to win the dessert. Yeah. Much better than reading another note that tells me that I'm an environmental villain because I want another towel. Yeah.
Thank you. We received lots of online questions. Okay. So let me choose one. Okay. In hedonic context, actually hedonic context can be many other contexts other than tourism,
Absolutely,
right? For
yes.
example, in the fashion consumption.
Leisure, anything.
Leisure, anything, right? So do you think the theory can apply to other contexts?
Yes, I absolutely think so. We didn't develop it for other contexts, but I absolutely think, vaccination is a good example. Vaccination is not a hedonic context. And yet I would argue that it would have been clever to have a more enjoyable approach to triggering it than not. So yes, absolutely. I think that it's not only the hedonic context, and I don't think it's limited to sustainable behavior. I think that all these three constructs should work beyond that scope.
Okay. Another question is that, do you think this theory apply to the general population? That means no matter about the age, culture, or some other
Yeah, good
demographic.
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would argue that in principle it does, but as you saw with my arcade game, then the specific intervention will have to be segment specific. Yeah. So if you look at the dessert versus the arcade game, both of them are enjoyment focused triggers. So if you want, the theory is valid for both those segments. But what triggers enjoyment in an old person versus a young person is quite different. So the manifestation, the translation of the enjoyment into the actual intervention might have to be different. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience?
Thank you for your insightful talk. My question is whether the reason why you select habit and effort into the new theory, because I noticed one of the figures in the slides, apart from pleasure, social norm, pleasure, and beliefs also explain 100%, and nudge and beliefs also explain 100%. Why not merge these factors into the theory?
Because we don't find evidence that it works. Like if you looked at our field experiments, whenever we do something that's belief-based, it kind of fails. Yeah. So yeah, sure, there's a few combos. So you see a few combinations where they leverage beliefs and social norms, right? And it worked. That's fine. But overall, if you look at our 10 years of field experiments, whenever we leverage beliefs, it doesn't work. If I had to add something, I would add social norms, but certainly not beliefs. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So regarding the enjoyment aspects, have any way on like which ones are most generally efficient? Like you talk about the voucher gifts, is it humor, is it music? Is there any general weights on which you should focus on?
No, I don't have an answer to that. You know why? Because field experiments are very difficult to run. So if you wanted to criticize this body of work, is that each field experiment is a single site experiment. So our ability, if I would run each experiment at 100 different venues. And then I could tell you exactly under which condition what works. But with single site experiments, we are very limited in being able to do it. I can tell you, though, that we tried humor numerous times and it doesn't work, which really upsets me because I really like that. My favorite one was the so-called fat cat study. You saw we had the sign for the food waste. In that same experiment, I didn't tell you, but it also failed. We had the fat cat. Literally in that hotel, there's a fat cat, like obese cat called Marco. And all the guests know the cat. So we had a second sign that said, look, Marco's got serious health problems and he eats the food waste. So the more food waste you generate, the more Marco is at risk of a heart attack, right? And literally everyone giggled. In the pre-test, in the field experiment, the humor totally worked. Zero translation into plate waste reduction, which was heartbreaking because that's such a simple intervention that's so nicely connected with that particular venue, right? Yeah.
Are you sure that, I was thinking because humor translates very poorly between cultures. Are you confident in this assumption that it's ineffective, or are you just in this context?
Yeah, so confidence is not what we rely on generally. We rely on manipulation checks. So for every field experiment you see, there is a survey experiment in advance, which checks the mechanism. So in this case, we need to test that the humor works. Yeah. And so we do that in survey studies. And if it doesn't work, we never even go to the field experiment. Yeah.
Any other questions? So I would like to ask one. It's like because here we're talking about people's behavior during travel, right? Particularly, most of your studies are conducted in hotels, in restaurants, etc. So, because we're here, like we have people from different background, like we're talking about how we can move the sustainability further in the whole society in different part of the world, even in our daily life. Do you think like, because habit is the one I noticed that it's not really touched at the moment, right? So do you think like whatever we, like when you travel, you got influenced by this and that message, right? So do you think our this kind of effect or like sustainability encouragement you received in travel can be bring back to the daily life, or like are we trying to help to nurture the habit when like you never know this and you pick it up in the travel context, then you come back to daily life and become a habit, that it can be better. In my mind, it can be better for the society, right?
That is a great hypothesis. And we actually wrote a paper about that because we were hoping that we could use the vacation context as a habit breaker. But turns out we can't. Turns out that it's the opposite. If anything, you're going to develop some bad habits that you're going to take home. Yeah, but it's absolutely true. Like we know in terms of habits, when can you change people from using the car to public transport? When they move. So when they move from one location to another, you give them a free public transport ticket and you tell them how to get to work. That break of the context allows them to develop a new habit. But I think the vacation context doesn't work because people can really, they're different. They know that that's an exceptional situation.
Yeah, so because this also is a question come from the audience, is that is talking about, okay, well, like how we make this impact bigger, more extended, because now what our experiment being conducted in a few hotels, right?
Yeah,
it's not,
absolutely. Yeah.
like then how like we can shape the the change over the industry or over the expanded ways to influence people's behavior.
Well, so my answer, you're not going to want to hear that because nobody wants to hear it. But really, I've done this for a long time because I was frustrated with regulators. But now, after all these years, I'm back to the regulators. And I think Hong Kong is a really good example. Hong Kong just said you can't have plastic bottles in hotels. And all hotels were moaning and groaning for a few weeks, and then they adjusted. Right? And nobody cares. Everyone's just as happy. Everyone has enough water, whether it's filtered, whether, they find solutions. So I think maybe these insights could be used by governments. I mean, for example, why wouldn't the government say, we do not permit routine daily room cleaning in hotels? We allow hotels to clean for free upon request, but not by default. Immediately, large-scale change, we would have 63% reduction in room cleaning. Why can't the government say, I know, people don't like nanny states, but really the truth is we haven't as humanity particularly proven that we are individually very responsible for the planet, right? So if we know what doesn't hurt people and what doesn't limit their freedom, maybe that could be regulated. And then people still have the freedom to choose the unsustainable option. But it just makes it that bit harder.
Yeah. All right. Also, we have students, right? In our seminar, many of them are postgraduate students. So they're asking, like, if they're interested in this line of research or to expand this theory or do more research along this area, what are your suggestions?
Well, I mean, I think it's obvious. We need to do more. If we want to change behavior, right, we need to test theories. And that's really important. Like this theory is now out there, but it's out there not to be validated. It's also out there to be disproven, right? That's how knowledge is created. People put a new hypothesis out, and then that's a call for people to go and test it. And we are not offended as the people who are putting it forward. Sometimes you might find it doesn't work, and that's just as valuable as when you find it does work. So collectively, I think you should be, if you are interested in behavior change, you should be putting a lot of theories to the test. You should have the courage to develop your own theories because, any contribution is better than doing more changes in beliefs, which we've seen a million times doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, please, Professor.
Thank you for the seminar. It's very inspiring and a lot of insight in terms of behavior change in tourism and hospitality context. Many of the participants, I think, are from other disciplines like engineering, science, computing. Technology can also help in terms of reducing carbon emission, environmental pollution, and so on and so forth. But behavior is difficult to change, right? If you want to change behavior, normally you have to spend a lot of effort to change the behavior, and they will change back because some of the behavior are habitual. So what do you think the technology can help in terms of reduce whatever you are trying to reduce, carbon emission, plate waste, and so on and so forth? How this can actually also compensate on the human behavior change, which is difficult.
Yeah. So maybe just to answer the compensation question first, Yayan Sun from UQ just published in Nature Communications the latest carbon emissions, and the evidence is not strong. So as I said, 3.5% increase in emissions, but only 0.3 technology-related reduction. So if you look at the evidence, there's no reason for hope. But of course, there is massive potential for technology, right? So for starters, whenever we build new buildings, whether they're residential building or hotels, we can now build them totally differently, where by default, the emissions are lower, right? For example, in Europe, I haven't seen it in Australia, but they're starting to have solar cells on facades. So even if you live in an apartment block, you can have your little personal solar cell and generate electricity on the front of your house, right? Technology in terms of, to give you an example, air conditioning use. The problem is, I will say though, in tourism, is that these technological solutions usually are only affordable to the really big hotels, right? The little mom and pop hotels, which are the majority, 90% of them, really can't. But there was a great study with a Westin hotel where the engineer in charge of the air conditioning system just played with the limits. So they limited the maximum and the minimum that the guests could set. That's a totally technological solution. And just calculated how many, or counted how many complaints he got. So then he optimized complaints versus basically variability, right? That's kind of a really interesting combination of a technological solution with a human solution. Very strong evidence in the water saving space. There have been 2 or 3 studies where if you have a device that meters that measures the liters while you're showering and displays it to you in real time, massive reduction in water and electricity use from hot shower use. What's the problem though? People hate it, right? So it works, but if I'm in a hotel, I do not like you monitoring how much water I've used, yeah? Technology for field experimentation. For us, it would be virtually impossible to run those experiments because we're not rich enough to have research assistants measuring the plate waste for 5 months. We cannot put a research assistant in someone's shower, right, to measure how long they're showering. So technology for all of this is absolutely essential. Something we haven't done yet, but we've always wanted to, but we never got around to, is dashboards for managers. Right? Again, that's technology. So if you have a monitoring system, which we could already create now with all the sensors we have, if we had a sexy looking dashboard where the hotels can gamify and compare, you know, how am I doing compared to the neighboring hotel, and see that there's improvement potential. All of those are technological solutions. So, you know, I am an absolute huge believer in an interdisciplinary effort. Architecture, you know, information technology, all of these approaches play a massive role. And I personally think best they're combined, because I think we as behavioral scientists are a bit hopeless in terms of using technology, but also some of our engineers are a bit hopeless in understanding humans, right? So the best combo is if we team up and we bring to the table our knowledge of people, and they bring to the table their knowledge of technology. And we have that actually. We have a bunch of engineers we work with. We have a group meeting every week where we meet with the engineers. And I find this the most rewarding part of my work, because they come and they love LLMs, of course, because everyone loves LLMs now. So every week they say, oh, could we use an LLM for this? And we say, yes, but not for this, you know? And then we come and we say, we've got this problem. Can't you give us a device that fixes it? It's a really fun space. And I personally, from my experience as a researcher, I think the most exciting developments, be they methodological or theoretical, for me have always come out of interdisciplinary work. What I will also say is it's hard, right? I had I had a lot of meetings last week with people from the tourism school, postdocs and fellows, and they all say, but field experiments are difficult. Yes, they are. But when you get something done, you have real knowledge that you can actually say with confidence what it means. Same with interdisciplinary work. Is it easy? No, it's very hard, because when you start working with an engineer, you say the same word and it means something totally different to the engineer than it does to you. But again, is it worth it? It absolutely is worth it, because once you learn each other's language, you fly, right? Whereas if you stay in collaborations in your own discipline, it's just like you're cloning yourself. That's pretty boring, right? Much more interesting to bring additional knowledge in.
All right, so if no more questions, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
DOLNICAR,
Thanks for having
for
me.
the very insightful talk. And may I invite Professor Song to present a souvenir to Professor Don.
Give you a smaller plate.
Yes, small plate, excellent. No waste. Yes. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Actually, I suppose also to conclude the
Yes,
session.
yes.
So I was given a mic to conclude.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you very much for the wonderful talk. I think our students and faculty members benefit a lot from your talk, especially from the perspective of human behavior changes, how to really actually change human behavior. And also there's some indication in terms of collaboration between different disciplines, and this is a good example of the pair and also RCTT, because we are interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary research institute and centers. So I hope these type of seminars will continue. And thank you very much for being here, and thank you for your participation. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you.
Sorry.